the Quail's knitting nest. My name is Joy, and this is my nest. Today I am wearing a sweater that I just made this winter. It's called Seachange by Jennifer Steingass. This is a really well-written pattern. I enjoyed knitting it. It has great short row shaping around the shoulders and also under the armpits. It's worked from the bottom up, which I prefer. I did do a few modifications, not too many on this one. I did some waist shaping and I added a couple more short rows at the bottom of the back. And I added a fourth color. The yarn I used is distelfink farm yarn, fingering weight. However, the pattern calls for DK weight, so I doubled it. So I worked it double-stranded. And I absolutely love this yarn. It's pretty soft. It's not as soft as the alpaca sweater I made, but it's pretty soft. I've worn it a couple of times, maybe 3 or 4, and it's not showing much wear yet. A couple pills here and there, but it's great. So I love the pattern, the colors that I picked out, I'm really happy with. And the fit is good, and the yarn is wearing great, so I'm really happy with this sweater. I highly recommend it. I'm hoping to do another one of her patterns at some point. We are still required to stay at home here in Pennsylvania, and now whenever we go out, if we do go out, we are supposed to wear masks. I'm not real friendly with my sewing machine, but I hauled it out and I made a couple of masks. So this is what I have. It's not perfect, but it's serviceable. I might try another pattern this week and see how that works out. We'll see. Last fall, I was watching Fruity Knitting, and she interviewed a woman named Helen Robertson. She's from the Shetland Isles. And she is experimenting with a new technique that she calls FISS, F-I-S-S. It stands for Fair Isle Slip Stitch. She was looking for a way to work. Normal Fair Isle knitting is worked with only 2 colors in a row, but then you change your colors all over the place to make it look like it's more colors than it actually is. But she was looking for ways to incorporate more than 2 colors in one row in a simple way without having to strand 3 or 4 colors in a given row. And what she came up with was this, what she calls the FISS method. And she has one free pattern, which I was intrigued by this idea, and I liked what she showed on the interview, so I got it and I worked it. This is it. It's called the FISS Cowl. So as you can see, there's 3 colors. A green, a beigey color, and then like a dark brown. And it looks like they're all stranded more or less equally across. She has you start with a strip of ribbing, and then you work the cowl up, and you finish it with another strip of ribbing on the other side. And the thing about it, I think it relates to the the way that it's worked, the edges end up being they roll over like normal knitting would, but to the extreme. And it's very difficult to block. So what she does is she has you fold over the ribbing and sew it down to the back. And that helps stabilize that curling edge. On the back side, you can see if you look closely, that the browns, the light brown and the dark brown, have been stranded, but it looks like the green was not, because you don't see green floats along there. And that's because it's not. So on the rounds that you work the browns, the light and the dark brown colors, you are doing normal stranded knitting. But you're slipping the greens. So you knit light brown, dark brown, and then when you get to a green, you just slip it without working it. Then when you do the next round, you do a green round. You knit all the greens and you slip the browns. So it's a combination of Fair Isle and then slip stitch, specifically Mosaics with slip stitch, because they're done in paired rows. So you do two rounds of the same round, and it gives you a geometric pattern. So it alternates stranding on one round and then slipping or mosaic knitting on the next round. So I was really happy with the way it turned out and intrigued by the process. Every fall there's an event in Pennsylvania called Knitter's Day Out, and I usually teach there. I thought this method would be a good thing to teach as a class. So I decided to come up with my own pattern to use to teach the class, and this is what I came up with. Now this is not a cowl, this is what I call an ear warmer or a headband. I was looking, excuse me, for a project that is not too big, that you might possibly finish in a 3-hour class. So I experimented with a couple different patterns. I went to Barbara Walker's Mosaic Treasury of Knittings. I think it's the third treasure, I forget. Or maybe she has a special standalone Mosaic book. I forget. I should have brought it. I'm sorry. And I searched through that book and I found a pattern that I thought would work really well with 3 colors. I also used Aran weight yarn on size 10 needles, so something that would work up faster. So I knit the one panel. I was thinking I would do it like this, just one panel. I knit it up and discovered the same thing, that it just curls right over. And you could block it, but I'm not sure it would keep the block, or I didn't even try. So what I ended up doing was, after I finished the first piece of it, I continued on and did a second one. And then just folded it over. And on this one I did a 3-needle bind off to join the top and the bottom. So now it's double thickness. So it's not only stranded, so it's heavier anyway, but it's also a double thickness. So this would be really warm to wear on a cold winter day. I submitted this and they accepted it as a class. So when that happened, I needed to write up the pattern, because at this stage it was just basically scratchings on a piece of paper. So I wrote up the pattern and I made a couple more. This one I actually did is only one layer, so you can see on the back the stranding. So in this case I stranded the white and the pink, and I did mosaic knitting using the blue. The funny thing is, I don't have a lot of Aran weight yarn in my stash, and I wanted to do different colors. So I didn't have a lot of options besides what I had already made. So I went looking through the worsted and thought, I wonder how it would turn out if I work it worsted. This is Cascade 220. So to get my gauge, I went up from a 10 to an 11 size needle, I think. But as you can see, it's shorter. So even increasing the needle size did not compensate for the lighter yarn that I used. And you can kind of see how the top is curling. I blocked this pretty hard to keep it from curling at the top, and it's still a little bit curling, but it's okay. Since it's only one layer though, it's a little bit stretchier. This has basically no stretch to it at all. And then since I didn't achieve what I was looking to do with this, I went back to my Aran stash, and I did manage to find a couple of more colors to put together. So now I have, it kind of looks red, white, and blue, but it's actually more like red, white, and purple. Same on both sides. And this one, instead of doing a 3 needle bind off, I grafted the top to the bottom. But because I did a purl turning row between the two knit sections, when I did the graft, I did a purl graft. Instead of the regular Kitchener stitch that you do on the tip of a toe, I did it purlwise instead, which I've never done before. And I discovered, to my surprise, I expected to get one purl row, like on the purl turning row. That's what I expected to get when I grafted them. But that's not what I got. I got what looks like 2 adjacent purl rows. So it like purled a row from the stitches on the front needle and purled a row from the stitches on the back needle. It totally confused me. I mean, it looks fine. Probably can't even tell. That's the graft side, and then this is the regular purl row turning side. And I suppose if I thought about it, it might make sense, but I'm still a little perplexed. Because when you do a normal Kitchener stitch, it only gives you 1 knit row. So if you do it in reverse, why would it give you two purl rows? I don't understand. It hurts my brain. Now I have this pattern written up, and it's a brand new pattern, but I'm the only person that's ever knit it. I am looking for pattern testers. If any of you would be interested in testing this for me, let me know. Tell me down in the comments. I will contact you. You need to know how to knit in the round, how to strand 2 colors, and how to do mosaic knitting, which is slip stitch knitting. I would love to have you join me in this little project. Knitter's Day Out is in September. With the virus going on, who knows what's going to happen. If it'll still be on, or who knows, maybe they'll end up doing it virtually. Seems like a lot of stuff is going online these days. Like I mentioned, the Allentown Fiber Fest went online. Maryland Sheep and Wool is going online this year, and there's a Vogue Knitting Live coming up in a couple of weeks. So if they can't have the day in person, maybe they'll do it online. I have no idea. Stay tuned. What am I working on now? Back in February, I think, it was opportunistic. It was kind of an unplanned trip to go visit my in-laws, which turned out to be a good thing because then everything got locked down. We went out to visit them in New Jersey, and my mother-in-law is cleaning out her yarn stash, and she gave me a whole big black garbage bag full of her yarn stash. In the bag was another bag which was full of this yellow yarn. So you can see half of it's already gone. And inside this bag of yellow yarn was this pattern. So between the pattern, which is a jacket for a woman, and the yarn, which is my mother-in-law's favorite color, I got the clue that she probably was going to make this for herself at some time. But she hasn't knit in years now. And I guess she's not planning on doing it anytime soon since she gave all her stuff away. So I got into my head, well, maybe I'll make it for her since she didn't make it for herself. This is called WIP Aran Coat by Mary Maxim. This yarn is Cloudspun, also by Mary Maxim. And it says chunky weight on the front. I always forget what the difference between chunky and bulky is, but it says it's chunky weight. The pattern recommends size 10 needles to get a gauge of 3.5 stitches per inch. I had to go down to a size 8 to get that gauge. That shows you how loose of a knitter I am. You can see it has a cable up the edges, and in the pattern, the cable is written out. It's this one little paragraph right here, cable edging. But I'm a visual person, so I made myself a chart. It's so much easier for me to read from a chart. And I have one sleeve done. I started with the sleeve. You work the cable edging first, then you pick up stitches all along the edge, and then you work it up from the bottom to the top, and then you bind off the top. And the reason this has so many tails hanging off of it is that I'm not used to working with chunky yarn. This is a 50-gram ball, and this one sleeve has almost 4 balls of yarn in it. You knit and you blink and you've used up the entire skein. I'm used to working with 100-gram balls of sock yarn where you never run out. So this has been a little different for me. So I have one sleeve done. I'll work on the rest, see what happens. That's it for me today. I hope all is well with you. Let me know. Till next time. Bye-bye.